Hello, I'm joined by Craig today, who's going to talk to us about how the lockdown has affected him. He works at a university. I'll just let him introduce himself and let us know what he does. Hello.
Hi. I'm Craig. I work for a university. I'm a librarian, and I have been working at home for the last 7 weeks or so now.
So 7 weeks, so that's pretty much as soon as it started. Are you still as busy working from home?
Yeah, it's different. We're offering a different service, obviously what we were before. We were given a couple of weeks just to get ourselves sort of aligned with online teaching and learning and support. And certainly the way that we support students, we've tried to replicate as much as we can and deliver online. So I've done lots of where I would do tutorials with students face to face. We're doing those video conferencing using Microsoft Teams. We're delivering our sessions online. Obviously, there's a big issue with resources and ebooks. Many of our books are available as ebooks, but an awful lot aren't. So there's been a pressing demand over the last couple of months now for ebooks. The problem we have is that not all books are available as ebooks. Some are not available by the publishers, they're just not made available. So we are really struggling at times. Some of the publishers have been really good and they've released books as ebooks. We've managed to get them as trials, or there's been certain workarounds. We take full use of digitization laws, so we can scan chapters of books, copyright pending. But the other thing we've had to do, we've had to be really creative and almost come up with alternatives. So when students and staff come to me and said, okay, we want this particular book, and it isn't available as an ebook and we can't get it in any shape or form, then we'll have to do some research and find some alternatives and go back. So that's been quite interesting in many ways, because usually that isn't something that we tend to do. We tend to sort of direct, or we buy a print copy, but these are unique times. So we've had to think out of the box slightly, but actually it's been a challenge and I'm quite enjoying the challenge, even though it can be frustrating. But it's and also I think the feedback we're getting so far from the students and staff has been very positive. We're trying to sort of put our library online as much as we can.
Yeah. So I suppose with the age we live in, with the internet, it's made things slightly easier for you. How do you think you'd have coped if this had happened, say, 30 years ago?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I was having a conversation with some colleagues, certainly in terms of the service. I don't know what we would do. I think it would be extremely limited. We would have some limited capacity, I suppose, to photocopy materials. Obviously, there wouldn't be any ebooks. I think we'd be in a very difficult. I think what we'd be doing, because we have a lot more 30 years ago, a lot more paper journals, there is very limited access to the university for key members of staff. So I think what we will be doing, we will be making a lot more use of the photocopying and things like that. But certainly we wouldn't be able to do the one-to-ones that we do. We wouldn't be able to deliver any form of teaching. It would be very basic. So I think in some ways that we're harnessing technology as much as we possibly can. And even if, you mentioned 30 years ago, I think even 5 or 10 years ago, before broadband, everybody had it. There's also this assumption as well, that everybody's got internet access. And I remember 10 years ago, or even maybe 15, when I was at meetings, and there was questions going around, is everybody on email? Things like that. So I think that if, in terms of this, obviously this pandemic is pretty serious, extremely serious, but actually, in some ways, that I think we're using the technology the best way we possibly can, at the moment.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I didn't have Zoom until this started, so I think a lot of people, it's pushing people to learn more about technology. And you mentioned good feedback from the teachers and students. Are on the whole, the students coping well with it? They're still working and motivated?
Yeah, I think the problem is that a lot of it is about, we don't want to lose students as such, because it's very easy, I think, when we're in a situation like this, where students who are perhaps not always maybe the most engaging with us, and they sort of drift off if we're not careful. So I think we need to be even more on the ball and more careful to speak to students. I mean, I've had lots of individual requests for, I'm trying to build up a rapport with my students. I look after a couple of major schools within the university. And it's, you know, it's been nice getting the emails from the students and comments saying we're still working. And so there's always those other ones, those ones that that are difficult to engage. And sometimes it might be technological issues. It could well be other issues as well. We also have to remember as well that a lot of people are in very difficult situations working remotely. You know, they've got family, they've got conflicts, they've got other issues, as well as studying towards a degree. So I think, you know, we have to be very careful and almost consider each on a case-by-case basis as well. But making sure we're available when people need us. You know, we're offering an online instant chat service on our website. This is a bit just like you know, when you go to an insurance company, you're on there for 2 minutes, so can anybody help you? We do the same thing. So actually that's been quite good. We've managed to answer lots of questions. A lot of it's about, I think, clearing up anxiety as well. There's lots of anxiety that students might have about when their library books are due back, for example. You know, things they shouldn't need to be worrying about, but obviously they are worrying about it. And we're doing our best to sort of address those particular issues.
Yeah, that's really good. So you pretty much sounds like you've been as busy, if not busier, than before it all happened. Has it affected you in your personal life? I mean, you managed to get out for the walks, and I know you've set up a sort of Facebook page to help people.
Yeah. Well, I could go out for more walks than when I do, but it probably do me more good than I do. I do try and go out, but I have to do more. But I did set up a group. Yeah, I quite enjoy cooking and baking, and I actually find that's quite a good way to keep my mind off and sort of ease anxiety. So it was only by a sort of off-the-cuff comment from a friend, funny enough, who used to be a librarian, and she suggested, well, why don't you make up a page? You know, because I was thinking about maybe doing some like video blogging and stuff like that. And I thought, no, it's just too much like hard work. So I just put a couple of recipes online, step by step, and somebody said, oh, well, why don't you set this group up? So I did. And it's just, the idea was to just bring up, because there's lots of, it's not quite as bad now as it was 6 weeks ago, but there's a lot of shortages of basic things, you know, butter, flour, eggs, fruit, you know, those sort of things, dried fruit. And so what I wanted to do was to look at what was in the cupboard, what good recipes can be made quite easily without looking for anything exotic in any way in terms of ingredients. So I started posting a few things, just a recipe for a fruit cake and for scones. I think things that people used to make, but they don't anymore. And I think we're very much in a consumable society where people don't have the time often to cook. But then, you know, we're all at home. We can, you know, we've all got ovens. We can do things, and you know, and I invited a few people, and I think we've got about 150 there now, and it's quite nice because we all sort of post our recipes and tips and advice, and people are very encouraging. So in some ways, it's quite a sort of a support group as well as just a baking group. I want to make it a bit more than just a baking group.
Yeah.
But hopefully that will continue, you know, in the future. I mean, I've picked up some interesting ideas on there, and I'm sure other people have as well. So that sort of kept me going. In other ways, apart from work. I think it's very easy when you're working at home. I mean, luckily I've got an office. I think it's very easy for work just to keep going and going and going, not be able to switch off. And I think just doing that is helpful. Like today, I worked this morning. I've got this afternoon off, and I just made a quiche, just freeze. Yeah. So at least then I'm trying to eat more healthily. So I'm cooking, I'm batch cooking, I'm freezing stuff. And I think that I haven't done for, you know, quite a while, because working full time, the last thing you want to do is get home and start cooking from scratch.
Exactly. So that's good. I mean, you've got more creative with things, and I've noticed that a lot. Trying to keep these to under 15 minutes. We're nearly there. Is there anything else positive you've seen come out of all this? Because that's kind of what I'm trying to do with these interviews, find the positivity to come out of it.
Yeah, I thought, because everyone's in the same situation, all have an understanding what each is going through. And I think it's been quite handy having the online chats with friends and family. it's been, you know, I've been taking part in things like online quizzes, and obviously I live on my own, so it's quite nice to sort of buddy up with other friends, and we can do an online quiz. I did one last night, I've got one tonight. And it's just an hour where you've got a little bit of social interaction. And I've noticed that even going on walks, people generally say hello, they're more friendly, more than, you know, you would ever usually get. Most people thank you.
Yeah.
If you see, I mean, I think a lot of it is, I'm afraid, in Ipswich, where you see someone with a dog and you say hello to them, they blink if they walk. Whereas where I grew up in a sort of more rural town, people are more likely to say hello anyway. So it's little things like that. But I think everyone's in the same situation, and I think it's, but we will come out of it, and hopefully, you know, we'll learn a lot. I've certainly learned a lot about the way that I deliver you know, in terms of my work online. And I think there's a lot of positives in terms of learning about ourselves, and also I think being reflective as well is really important.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. That's about it, really. So thanks a lot for your time, and keep the recipes coming, and hope it all sorts out soon. So, but generally, thank you very much for chatting.